The movie begins by showing us a red convertible being driven by an elderly man, with blonde-haired Alice sitting on the passenger side. The car arrives at a psychiatric hospital where it drops her off alone. Inside, the doctors receive the referral letter from Alice's previous doctor, instructing them that she was a cunning liar and advising caution. During her introduction to Dr. Teodoro, she denies all the allegations brought against her by her previous doctor, whom she claims was coerced by her husband to make false accusations in an attempt to steal her wealth. She admits that although she was unhappy with her husband, she still found him attractive and would never do anything to harm him, despite his claim of attempted poisoning. After spending some time with Alice, the doctor concludes that she is arrogant and paranoid and then hands her off to Montserrat, the deputy director of the facility. Montserrat explains the size of the place and the rules and then takes Alice to register and give away all her personal belongings. After going through the necessary checks and receiving a change of clothing, Alice is taken to her cell. In the privacy of her room, she gathers all the articles and pictures she had collected and continues to investigate the death of Damian, Dr. Raimundo's son and her close friend. In an alternate timeline, the doctors, along with Samuel, discover a dead body in one of the cells. The body appears to have been beaten to death. Now suspicious of the patients, Samuel orders everyone to be returned to their cells. The director calls the police, who investigate the body and determine that the person died from multiple stab wounds. Under the bed, they find a large glass shard, which they assume to be the murder weapon. One of the nurses leads them to the basement where the equipment is stored and shows them the broken window, explaining that the door had been forced open. After examining the institute's maps, the investigators request a list of every able-bodied person. Teodoro, the other doctors, and the detectives gather all the men in one room and begin calling out names, including Ignacio's. Initially, Ignacio refuses to go to the interrogation room, but he cannot escape once everyone notices his bloody hands. The lead investigator accuses him of murder, but Ignacio explains that his hands are only bloody because he had tried to help the deceased boy. In the morning, Alice goes to the common dining hall and is approached by Ignacio, a well-mannered man who admits that he is the only one in the asylum who acknowledges his own insanity. While they talk, Alice is startled by a little man who is a pervert lurking under her table, attempting to get a peek. Ignacio chases the short man away, but he is protected by the elephant man. Ignacio invites Alice outside for a smoke and tells her that Samuel, the new director, has made significant improvements to the hospital for the benefit of the patients. In the garden, Alice sees male twins whom Ignacio explains were born in the asylum and are called Romulo and Remo. Romulo spends his days mimicking the actions of those around him and protecting a younger girl he considers his sister. Remo is the twin who cannot speak. Later, Alice is taken to meet Dr. Caesar, who introduces himself as her testing doctor. During their session, he asks her multiple questions to assess her current mental state, informing her that she can choose to reserve her answers for the director when he arrives. As they continue to talk, Alice is certain that she has captured the doctor's attention. She tricks him into giving her the bathroom key, creates a distraction with a flooded toilet, and sneaks into the file room. After stealing the necessary file, she cross-references all the information she has and circles the name Urquieta as the suspect. The next day, Alice finds Ignacio outside and confronts him about a paper she found in the files. She is certain that the note was written by someone with schizophrenia, just as she is certain that Damian was killed by a person with the same illness. Suddenly, Ignacio hears the sound of thunder and starts running toward the facility, but Alice refuses to let him. As soon as the water touches his skin, he collapses to the ground and begins having a seizure, his face scarred as if he had been burned. Unable to understand what is happening, Alice rushes to get him help. In the infirmary, Ignacio is feeling much better and tells Alice that he has hydrophobia. Now that he has revealed his secret, Ignacio asks his newfound friend to share hers. Alice confesses that she entered the facility under false pretenses to investigate a death because she is a detective. She explains that Damian's murder was initially assumed to be a suicide, but she didn't think it added up. Instead, she is convinced that it was committed by one of his father's former patients. Alice asks about Damian, and Ignacio confirms that he was a violent schizophrenic. On the night he died, the girl whom Romulo considers his sister had gone missing. Later, Alice witnesses the perverted dwarf harassing a patient and follows him into the woods. As she searches, she stumbles upon Romulo, who leads her to a shelter he had built. Romulo explains that he made it for his brother, sister, and her, assuming that she is their mother. Romulo hugs her, and she embraces him, promising not to abandon him so he won't become upset. When Alice hears a voice outside, she leaves the shelter to investigate but gets attacked by the dwarf and loses consciousness. When she wakes up, she finds herself tied to a bed in the hospital with Dr. Caesar beside her. He informs her that she has been confined because she allegedly killed the dwarf who had attacked her. Alice remembers very little about the incident but is certain that it was self-defense, as she recalls the dwarf attempting to rape her. When Dr. Caesar mentions calling the police, Samuel enters the room and insists on speaking to Alice first. In private, Alice updates Samuel, the only other person who knows she is a detective, about her investigation. Samuel, looking at her strangely, informs her that he has never had any correspondence with her in his life. Confused, Alice confronts him about his lie, but he insists that it was their first interaction and that she is now his patient. Angry, she pushes him away and attempts to escape but is restrained by the orderlies and sedated. When she regains consciousness, Alice finds Montserrat and learns the truth about why she had admitted herself to the facility. She requests to be brought before the council to prove herself. Sitting in front of the 5 head doctors of the facility, Alice confesses that she had deceived Dr. Teodoro into believing she was paranoid so that he would allow her to become a patient. She goes on to explain how she had met Dr. Donadio at a dinner party and asked him to investigate his son's death, which he believed was not a suicide. Dr. Donadio, a friend of Alice's husband, had been informed of her investigative skills. The day after the party, he had summoned her to his office, and they had discussed the details of the case, including the mental illness she would need to feign in order to enter the facility. For several days following their conversation, Alice thoroughly studied the case and concluded that Damian was murdered as an act of revenge by one of Dr. Donadio's former patients. Once she felt prepared to infiltrate the facility, she had written the letter that Dr. Teodoro later opened, describing her fabricated condition. Alice tells the council the hardest part of the whole ordeal was getting the signature of her husband on a letter incarcerating her. She had to trick him by hiding the documents under other bank files and tricked him into signing them to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. The next day, she told him that she was going to Buenos Aires and left, being dropped off at the facility by Dr. Donadio. After listening to Alice's accounts, the 5 doctors gather and discuss the woman's situation. Montserrat and Dr. Caesar wanted to call Alice's husband and Dr. Donadio to cross-check with the story she had told them, but Samuel is adamant that he has already solved the case. He tells them that Alice is suffering from delusion after having figured out that her husband only married her for her money. After creating a vivid picture of what might have transpired between Alice and her husband, he tells them to continue the antipsychosis medication he had prescribed. Montserrat stands up for Alice and tells Samuel that she would be forced to call the police unless they make sure that they weren't holding an innocent woman as a prisoner. Suddenly, a nurse enters and informs the council that Ignacio would like to come forth, saying that he had witnessed the dwarf's murder. He explains that he had followed Alice after she had gone out looking for the dwarf. Ignacio had seen him attack and try to rape her. When he saw Ignacio, he tried to run but tripped and fell, cracking his head on a stone. Once Ignacio's statement was registered, they let him leave after telling him that they had private matters to discuss. Once he was gone, they introduced her to a gray-haired man who had been intently listening to their conversation. Samuel asks Alice if she recognizes the man. When she doesn't, the gray-haired man introduces himself as Dr. Donadio, the psychiatrist she claimed she was investigating. Alice is agitated by the sudden confusion and has to be restrained. Samuel ordered shock therapy to be given to Alice alongside her other medication. As she sleeps on the hospital bed, she hallucinates the face of the man that had impersonated Dr. Donadio, and he tells her that the truth was whatever she made it to be. Alice starts to remember the party she had first met with the false doctor and comes to the conclusion that it must have been her husband who set her up. When she finally regains consciousness, she asks for Dr. Caesar and Montserrat to see her, and explains that she is sure all this is her husband's doing so that he can take all her money. She is also sure that Samuel has been paid off to keep her there. Alice is sure that if they check her bank account, all of her money would be gone. The only problem would be getting her out so they can do that. After long contemplation, Dr. Caesar and Montserrat agree to help her. As per their agreement, Dr. Caesar reports Alice's situation to the police captain, begging him to check her accounts while Montserrat rummages around in Samuel's office, finding out that Alice's husband had paid almost 20 times the normal amount. After the police station, Dr. Caesar goes to Alice's house and finds that everything was gone. Her husband is nowhere to be found. He calls and informs Montserrat of the events, confirming Alice's story. With the help of Ignacio and the other mental patients, Alice is able to escape by waiting until night and lighting a fire in the workshop. Ignacio manages to sneak out of his room and open all the other cells, creating chaos in the compound. It is revealed that previous scenes of the dead body found and the investigation are events following Alice's escape. The boy who had been stabbed to death was actually Romulo. Meanwhile, Alice uses the distraction to reach the gate where she encounters the coroner, who assumes she's one of the orderlies and tells her she's there to check on the departed body of a patient called Romulo. Alice is shocked by the news and returns to impersonate the coroner after hiding her in the car. After finding the passed-out coroner in the car, the investigator, Samuel, and the other doctors find Alice in the morgue with Romulo's body. Alice explains that Romulo's murderer was actually the Elephant Man because he had taken his only friend, the dwarf, and the girl he loved who Romulo considered his sister. The detective is upset that Samuel hadn't informed the police of the previous death. The men go to check the Elephant Man's hands for proof and find the lacerations due to the glass he had used to murder Romulo. The giant man is arrested and Alice is taken with the officers to give her official statement. After proving everything Alice said was true, Montserrat and the other doctors give Samuel a letter that officially calls for a meeting regarding the release of Alice. The next morning, Alice goes to the infirmary to see Remo, who was traumatized after losing his brother in such a devastating way. Sitting next to him, she tells him that she recognizes that he was actually Romulo and that the Elephant Man had killed his brother, thinking that it was him. She embraces the young boy and tells him that she would always be there for him. Alice is then taken to the trial to decide whether she should go free or not. After Samuel removes himself from the vote, the rest of the council unanimously votes for her freedom.